What's up is down, what's left is right. Chasing stars and holding you.
Well, you might recall earlier in the week I did point out that you should not, if you're a Bills fan, expect another boat race like the Bills enjoyed the past 3 weeks where they just blew everybody out by 3 or 4 touchdowns. The NFL is a week-to-week league, and the talent is a lot closer than most people realize. And no, I did not actually think the Bills would lose to the Jags. The Jags are only a 5.5-point underdog, which shows how seriously they are taken by the betting people and the NFL experts as well. But I did know that the Jags haven't played up to their potential for a long time, and their 25-20 beatdown of the Bills, boy, that was a tough loss for the Bills because they lost not only the game and their temporary lead in the AFC East, but they lost one of their most important players in All-Pro linebacker Matt Milano. The early reports are that Milano suffered a fractured leg and will be out for the year. So this is really, really tough news, but that's life in the NFL, and the Bills went through it a year ago, and now it looks like they're going to go through it again. Well, the Bills aren't going to use this as an excuse, hopefully, but I think the Jags did enjoy somewhat of an advantage by playing in London, and they won the game a week ago. The Bills did the best they could to adjust to the time difference. They arrived early Friday morning. And just a personal opinion here, but I don't see why the NFL shouldn't discontinue allowing any team to play 2 weeks in a row in any international city. And I know they're trying to expand their international play, but it's just not right for one team to sit there and be ready to go for another team that flies in and has to readjust to the time changes and everything else. So we'll see if they can fix that, but that's just one pet peeve. Another one, the officiating in this game. The NFL needs to find a crew that doesn't celebrate Flag Day after every play. And boy, oh boy, were they something else. More on that in a second. But before we break all this down, I want to thank a couple of my sponsors. Atwell Eye Care. Less than 6 months ago, I had cataract surgery done at Atwell. Now, my left eye was 230/20, so it was a little bit blurry. I'd had great vision most of my life. But now, I'm on the north side of 70, and my left eye was reaching such a point that even at Bills games, it was hard to see the field clearly. After 2 surgeries from Atwell, my vision is now just about a perfect 20/20. Yeah, I need specs to read, but I can see everything else perfectly. Also, I want to thank Blue Tusk Tech in Orchard Park, where they can hook you up with a new or used computer or fix the one you have. I've done that with this computer I'm on right now. And finally, a thanks to Global Vending Group of Buffalo. They are enhancing the literacy of children all over the world. They have a distribution of vending machines that make these books accessible in places where sometimes it's hard to get to them. So, back to the Bills. They're 3-2, again out of first place in the AFC East as Miami is back in front at 4-1, dismantling the Jets. More importantly, down the road, if you assume the Jags and Bills both reach the playoffs, and I think there's a very good chance of that, the Jags would have the tiebreaker for any home field advantage. To say that losing Milano is devastating isn't an overstatement. Defensive end Daquan Jones, who played with a pectoral injury, maybe the Bills' best defensive lineman so far this season, left the game early as well, so his status, who knows. The loss of cornerback Trey White last week was a factor today as well. Last year's top pick, Kyer Elam, who hadn't been playing, was picked on, and he gave up some key third down receptions to Calvin Ridley. Ridley, you might recall, was suspended for a season. He was betting on games with the Falcons, I think it was 3 years ago, but the Jags then got a real bargain. They spent a 6th-round pick to get him. Ridley had 7 catches for 122 yards, and we got tired of seeing that number 0 extend drives with some big third down catches. Now, to his credit, Elam was very physical. He had 11 tackles. That's a pretty good game. Middle linebacker Terrell Bernard also led the team with 16 tackles. And it was good to see Von Miller back out there on several series. He was basically a non-factor as he works back from that ACL surgery last November, but his return to form is important, and this was a good first step, and he's really going to be needed now because also you have defensive end Greg Rousseau out for an indefinite time period with a foot injury, and who steps up but defensive end A.J. Epineza. He had his best game as a pro, in my opinion. He had 2 sacks, 3 batted down passes. One of the sacks was a hat trick. He had the sack, the forced fumble, and the fumble recovery. Also, kudos to defensive tackle Ed Oliver. Had a very disruptive game with 9 tackles on his sack, but he showed some lack of discipline. He had 2 personal fouls in a row. One of them extended a touchdown drive, and then the next one allowed a closer point after touchdown, so the Jags, instead of kicking the point, went for 2 and got it. There was another, to the flavor of the game, a huge contingent of Bills Mafia joined an international crowd that included not only a lot of Jags fans, but many, many thousands of Bills Mafia and representative jerseys from 30 of the 32 NFL franchises. That's pretty cool. My daughter and her son-in-law and my son-in-law, who live in Scotland, took the train to London, and they said there were all kinds of Bills fans on the train coming down from Scotland. So everything was really fun until they kicked it off. The Bills, uncharacteristically, went 3 and out on their first 2 possessions, and although the Jags didn't sack Josh Allen, they did pressure him. Jags defensive coordinator Mike Caldwell blitzed 32% of the time, and on those blitzes, Allen was only 4 of 11 for 41 yards. Early on, I don't know whether it was jet lag or what, but the Jags' offensive and defensive lines dominated the Bills up front. The Bills, though, did fight back, although it was too little too late. Now, it's tough to blame this on Allen or offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey because the Bills simply could not run the ball. Maybe they gave up too soon. They only had 13 rushing attempts for the entire game. 3 of those were Allen, and that was for a total of 39 yards. Most disappointing of all, James Cook, 5 carries, 4 yards. 4. That's a minus 0.8 yards per carry, and not to pick on Cook, but he also dropped an easy 3rd down pass on the opening drive, and that would have been a first down and maybe set a better tone. Who knows? Statistically, Allen finished with better numbers than Trevor Lawrence, his counterpart, but Lawrence sacked 5 times. Boy, when the game was on the line, he came up with play after play. They were 10 of 18 on 3rd down, and Lawrence showed some fortitude. He suffered an apparent calf injury. You could tell he was in pain. He finished with 25 of 37 for 315 and a touchdown. He also fumbled 3 times and lost 2 of them. Allen, after a pretty slow start, did finish with some good numbers, 27 of 40, 359 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also scored on a short touchdown run. He also threw an interception that was basically like a punt. Stephon Diggs, again, the go-to guy. He had 8 catches, 121 yards, and a touchdown, and it was nice to see Gabe Davis get in there late with a couple of big catches. He chipped in with 100 yards and a touchdown on 6 grabs. Well, it was a humbling day for some of the younger players, and you start with rookie right guard Osiris Torrance. He's been having a good season, but during just one series, he was called for holding twice, 2 times in a row, when he was beaten by the Jags linebacker Josh Allen, the same name. To be fair, Josh Allen of the Jags only was credited with 1 tackle. He had some pressures, but he had 0 sacks. Now, this game is just, as I mentioned, another reminder that the NFL is a week-to-week league. Your last game, Miami anyone, doesn't mean anything. All teams don't play at the same level every week for a whole lot of reasons, but emotional commitment is a large factor in my opinion. By that I mean, if you want to pick a game, just look at any matchup. If you can determine which team is going to be more motivated, you can win some money. Now, a week ago, remember the Bills were hearing all about the Fins putting up 70 on the Broncos, and the Bills could not wait to hit the field. And of course, the Bills' jacked up crowd was a factor too. Ditto when you look at the Arizona Cardinals a couple weeks ago upsetting the Dallas Cowboys. They shouldn't have been within a whisper of the Cowboys, but they were. In this game, the Bills were dealing with an emotional wave of 3 straight blowout wins. Then you had the travel. The Jags, on the other hand, picked as an AFC power going into the season, boy, they've been disappointing, and they were really fired up to ground this Bills team into the ground, and they pulled it off. They're pretty good, especially defensively. They are not to be taken lightly, and when Trevor Lawrence avoids mistakes, he is mistake prone, but when he's on his game, he's tough to beat. Head coach, defensive coordinator Sean McDermott, he's going to have a good plan for the Giants next Sunday night. GM Brandon Beane's roster depth will be tested, and evidence of that. Linebacker Terrell Dodson is going to have to step up for Milano. Dodson played 3 quarters today, looked pretty good with 5 tackles. Rookie Dorian Williams also chipped in with 5 tackles. So we've got a long way to go. And the Bills have been pretty even keel whenever facing adversity, and they've got some coming up right now at 3-2. Again, thanks to Atwell Eye Care for my crystal clear vision, Blue Tusk Tech in Orchard Park for my computer needs, and Global Vending Group for their outstanding literacy vending program. We'll see you soon, everybody. So the Bills head into Sunday night's game against the Giants at Highmark Stadium kind of banged up and no longer in first place in the division. So what should they do about that? We'll have some thoughts on that coming right up. Hey, hello again, everybody. We can listen to the next man up and injuries are no excuse all day long, but reality is the Bills are not the same team they were going into that Jags game in London. Boy, what a debacle. The field was horrible. The travel arrangements we can talk about all day, but the Bills coming into that game, they were really on a high, coming off that 48-20 win over the Dolphins. They were ahead in the AFC East at 3-1, 5.5-point favorites over the underachieving Jaguars, who we knew coming into this season were going to be pretty good. They didn't show that until, unfortunately, they played the Bills in London. So what the heck happened? Well, first of all, I would like to, right here, mention my sponsors, starting with my newest, Atwell Eye Care. And I had cataract surgery done on both eyes just a few months ago at Atwell. The result was incredible. My left eye went from 20/230 to 20/20, the right eye from 20/40 to 20/20. I was at the Bills-Dolphins game up in the 300 level, and I've never seen the field as clearly as I did. So thanks to Atwell. Also thanks to Blue Tusk Tech in Orchard Park. They'll fix up any computer issue you have, either with something new or updating what you have. And finally, Global Vending Group of Buffalo, which is building a worldwide business aimed at helping children improve their literacy. So a great program there. So back to the Bills, who were on such a roll after that Finns frolic. It all kind of came crashing down. The Bills didn't only lose to the Jags 25-20, but defensive MVP Matt Milano, a likely season-ending injury. Boy, you can't replace him. Also going on IR with a torn pectoral muscle was defensive end Daquan Jones, who had been playing extremely well. Also, both tight ends are questionable for Sunday night's nationally televised date with the Giants at Highmark Stadium. And, of course, cornerback Trey White is also in IR with that torn Achilles tendon. So the debate on travel plans, the unfairness of the Jags' advantage of already being there, it's all history now. So it was an experience, and the Bills have to simply learn from it. All we're seeing on social media now is a lot of panic, a lot of sports media too. The Bills have to react to the losses by making trades now. Screw the future. Use some high draft picks as currency because our Super Bowl dreams are vanishing. Well, I'm sorry, I just don't agree with that at all. And GM Brandon Beane and head coach defensive coordinator Sean McDermott also are not about to let that happen. They know, and I think correctly, that as long as Josh Allen stays healthy, that Super Bowl window is open as long as they don't start mortgaging the future. You bring in some veterans who, yeah, their names sound good, Patrick Surtain, but they're getting older, and you'd have to overpay for them. And now you have players you want to keep, like Greg Rousseau. He's going to be up for a big contract soon. You want to be able to keep the people that you want to keep and let the other ones go, but not chase after high-paid players who are no longer at their productive peak. Now, heading into the game Sunday night, boy, it was good timing. The Bills are 14-point favorites, and they've been struggling with injuries under former Bills offensive coordinator, now head coach Brian Daboll. This is a game the Bills, I think, win unless they turn the football over, and that's always the case. That changes things in a hurry. But I would expect offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey to mix in the run and the pass, control the clock. Nobody's going to admit this publicly, but this game is also personal for McDermott. He badly wants to beat Daboll, and the Bills players all know that. It'll be a challenge for the Bills' key D play, a challenge with the Bills' key D players out. I think McDermott finds a way. Defensive end Von Miller will have a few more snaps. And defensive end Greg Rousseau is now listed as questionable. That's an upgrade. And his return to the lineup would certainly mean a lot. Now, cornerback, already a problem, of course, with Whiteout. Dane Jackson is now listed as questionable for the Giants. But whether he plays or not, last year's first-round pick, Kaiir Elam, he'll be out there. And I know he's been a disappointment. But for some fans and media to label him as bust already, I think is unreasonable, inaccurate, unfair. Elam is actually, I think, a more physical player than White in terms of stopping the run. He had 11 tackles against the Jags. You almost don't realize that. But, again, he had trouble covering Calvin Ridley, but who doesn't? Some key third down situations, all you see was number 0 catching perfectly thrown balls from Trevor Lawrence, and Elam was a victim. But I think the current backups may not have to duplicate the lost stars because they're going to improve by playing more. Elam is a good example of that. He has talent. He's got great speed, hip turn. He can make plays on the ball. He wants to get better, and I think he will get better. Now, with Milano out, veteran A.J. Klein and rookie Dorian Williams will split some time at the strong side linebacker, and it's going to be a challenge because Saquon Barkley is probably going to be back. He's coming off a high ankle sprain. That benched him the past 3 games, so that'll help the Giants. Daniel Jones, who's been struggling at quarterback, also suffered a neck injury, and he is expected to play, though. Midweek, it looks like he will. If not, former Bills quarterback Tyrod Taylor, who I always liked, will get the call. But even with all the Bills' injuries, either one of these guys will have a real challenge because the Giants' offensive line is pretty banged up. Things could be worse. Allen and the offense are relatively healthy. Again, both tight ends questionable. Kincaid dealing with a concussion. Dawson Knox a wrist injury. But the O-line is pretty healthy. Right tackle Spencer Brown, he's been playing a lot better. Rookie right guard Osiris Torrance had a couple holding calls in the Jags game, but I think he'll learn from that, and he'll be fine. He's been a force early in the year. Yeah, the run game against the Jags was awful, but on reflection, the Jags did a great job of stacking the box on early downs. James Cook had no place to go. Because of the score, though, the Bills basically gave up on the run early, and I think that'll be different on Sunday. Now, it bears repeating, please don't start taking Allen's play for granted. I think that would be a terrible thing. He's completing 73.1%, 1,407 yards, 11 touchdowns, 5 picks, but only 2 the past 4 games. He's also rushed for 3 touchdowns. Better yet, he's doing this now by running far less than he has before, and it hasn't hurt the Bills' overall production for the offense. Still the second highest scoring team in the league with over 30 points a game. Now, Allen is correct. He showed some annoyance this week that people continue reading into Stephon Diggs' sideline rants. That's who he is. He's having another fabulous season. And I'm also remiss not to again mention that I think it's a waste of time trying to analyze Allen's stoic sideline expressions as somehow showing that he's disinterested in the game. You could not be further from the truth. So summing it all up, the Bills are 3-2. They trail the Dolphins by a game. We have a dozen games to play in the regular season. Other teams are fighting injuries as well. This I see as a bounce-back game with the Bills winning it 31-10. We'll see. And again, a thank you to sponsors Atwell Eye Care, Blue Tusk Tech, and Global Vending Group. We'll see you soon.